Welcome to the Hail to the King podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Magnus.
And today we are going to go over The Outsider.
The Outsider, the book that we ignored for a couple months after it came out so that we could finally read it after the hype had gone down, right? That was our plan all along, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we finally got around to it, and honestly, I'm surprised how long it took to get to it. You know, just things have been really busy, and we started this podcast, couldn't decide if we wanted to do it as an earlier episode or something that we kind of worked towards. But surprise, we actually did a fourth book in a series on accident. Because for all of you who've read the book will know a character from the Bill Hodges trilogy shows up as a, very important character in this one. So, and that is Holly Gibney. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go over what is The Outsider about?
Yeah, so, well, real quick, everybody should know by now, but just in case you don't, there are going to be spoilers.
Spoilers!
So we hope you guys have read it, and if you haven't read it,
if you haven't, be okay with them spoilers.
Then whatever.
Love them.
Let's jump in. So, we're introduced to, well, how it starts out is a murder. Ralph Anderson, the main character, is interviewing a bunch of people.
Is he a sheriff, or is he
just a detective?
Police detective.
Yeah.
Ralph Anderson.
He seems to be higher up in the pecking order as far as detectives go, but yeah, he's a police detective, and
he's investigating what appears to be a very obvious open and shut case. Is that how you'd refer to it?
Yeah.
Like, a lot of eyewitnesses seeing the guy doing the things that lead to the murder, picking the kid up, this child in the town.
Frank Peterson,
luring him away into his, unmarked white van.
Yeah. And
driving away, and just, he's being very, very obvious about making sure that people around town see him doing, going to the hardware store to buy rope and handcuffs, not really, but, that sort of thing, just with a big smile on his face saying, hello, this is me.
Yeah.
You all know me.
There are so many witnesses that it just seems like a very straightforward case, and everything.
And they just want to get this child murderer off the streets, and it is a very gruesome murder. It is partially a defilement of the body in a sexual manner. I think a stick, a tree branch or something is used, and it is pretty vile. Just awful stuff. Again, everyone in the town, they just want to see this guy put away immediately. And the guy who, what's the name of it? Terry
Maitland.
Terry Maitland is
He's suspect number one because everybody who's a witness sees him. Mm-hmm. And so there's
he's the little league coach.
Yeah.
And so he's around, young boys always. And, they just want to get him behind bars as quickly as they possibly can in this slam dunk case. Yeah. They have tons of evidence. They got fingerprints. They have DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they have DNA. If you've read it, you already know. They acquire it in not the most pleasant way. But anyways, yeah, so Ralph Anderson and Samuels. Let me just check here. Yeah, Bill Samuels, the district attorney, are all gung-ho about this. They don't actually bring Terry Maitland in to question him about the rape/murder. They decide, we don't want to alert him that we're on to him.
Give him a chance to run
this case is so obvious, and it's all pointing to him. There's no doubt. And so they go, and Ralph Anderson and Bill Samuels decide to arrest him in probably the worst way possible. You find out later. They go in the middle of one of his baseball games,
like
Little League baseball games. Yeah.
Yeah, championship Little League game.
And they walk up walk up to him in front of everybody, and it's about 1,500 spectators watching.
Including his wife and children.
Yeah, his wife and 2 daughters. And they say right there, "We are arresting you for the murder of Frank Peterson," in front of all these people. And he is just dumbfounded. And, he's completely confused. They take him off the field, and then the doubt starts to creep into Ralph Anderson because of how Terry Maitland is acting. He's acting like an innocent person would be acting.
And his years of experience, looking into the eyes of people who are both guilty or innocent being accused of something, and he can kind of has that human lie detector thing going on that a lot of seasoned law enforcement seem to have.
Yeah, and so he's just, the doubts start to creep in, and it escalates, Well, what happens next is Terry Maitland, before they actually put him in the squad car, he tells his wife, "Call Howie Gold," and Howie Gold is a really good friend of the family. He was also one of the coaches, and he is
he a defense lawyer?
Yeah, he's a lawyer, and he is one of the best defense lawyers just around where they are. And so Howie, kind of lets Marcy Maitland, Terry's wife, know what to do, and he goes to the actual jail, or to the police station, and everything starts coming out. You start to figure out that Terry, at the time that the murder was supposed to have happened, was in a conference with several other teachers to see an author, like a pretty popular
book
author.
signing type thing.
Yeah, book signing / let's get to know the author thing, Q&A. And not only is he there, but he's actually caught on camera by some public access channel. And yeah, he
raises his hand, asks the author questions. He's very front and center on this video. So it becomes a case of you can't be, a person who is obviously guilty, who's also in another place at the same time, and there's evidence of him being in the other place as well. So I guess this is kind of a Ralph Anderson trying to figure out whether this could be something that is real, that like some way that either someone like a double or someone.
And that's actually what his wife suggests. His wife, Jeannie, she suggests, is this a case of doppelgangers? And he's kind of skeptical, but he really can't. Nothing adds up. They have DNA, they have fingerprints, they have everything they need in the actual town, which is Flint City, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. They have everything they need there, but they also have witnesses and a video of Terry Maitland in, I don't remember where it was, in another place. Mm-hmm. And so they have trouble squaring those things.
It's far away enough that he couldn't have been in both places at the same time.
Yeah, ultimately. He could not have just driven back, raped and killed Frank Peterson, and then gone back to the conference, happy as you please. Mm-hmm. And so that's what's going on here. Not Marcy. Jeannie's the first one that kind of brings up, is this case of the supernatural, looking at the facts, and Ralph completely brushes that off. I was just going to say, Ralph Anderson is pretty much not your typical Stephen King protagonist. A lot of his characters, whether they be in law enforcement or, a writer or whatever, a school teacher or, a lot of them are very open to the idea of the supernatural. As soon as things start happening, they kind of run with the flow.
Yeah, they kind of go with it and kind of lean that way pretty easily. Ralph Anderson is very stubborn when it comes to, again, the supernatural. And it takes him a very long time to, but by the time as the readers, we're already sold on the fact that it's going to be a supernatural story. Like there's a point you hit where it has to be something supernatural. but he just sticks with it, which is, again, like I said, not very typical of a Stephen King character. So
he almost reminds me of oh my gosh, I can't remember his name, but there's in the Talisman you have Jack Sawyer and you have his friend. His friend, and it's embarrassing because that's my favorite Stephen King book.
His last name is Sloat.
Yeah. There's Morgan Sloat and his son
Jimmy Sloat.
Jimmy.
I
can't remember his name, but either way,
it's been a little while.
Either way, his character is so stubbornly against the supernatural, and he kind of reminds me of Ralph.
Just refuses to believe.
Yeah, refuses even
because
regardless
acknowledging
of the facts in front of his
as soon
face.
as he acknowledges that something could be supernatural, it just changes everything about who he is and what he's thought his entire life.
Yeah.
So it's a hard thing to to balance.
To square away.
Yeah, to square away,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, so his friend, the lawyer, hires a private detective guy named Alec something. I can't remember his last name, but Alec.
Yeah.
So I think he's kind of he kind of reminds me of Bill Hodges actually. Yeah. He's a cool character. He kind of helps out the family and stuff protects them from the reporters who are hounding Terry's wife and kids and trying to get the story from him. But he goes on to they're gathering the evidence to prove that he was at this other location, at this conference, and it kind of the story culminates to a point where I think they're escorting him to a courthouse. Is that right?
Yeah, so he's actually going to the arraignment.
The arraignment, that's what it is, yeah.
And they are escorting him, and Terry, they offer him a bulletproof vest. And Howie Gold, his lawyer's like, man, that's stupid because it almost, you guys are making it sound like he's guilty, which in fact he's not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And so Terry's like, yeah, and I don't want to be sweating. I don't want to be sweating while I'm on the stand. That doesn't look good. So he refuses the bulletproof vest. And Frank Peterson's brother is in the crowd, and another person is in the crowd. A man, they call him the Burned Man.
Mm-hmm.
His face is all messed up. His arms, everything's messed up.
Just a suspicious-looking man in the crowd.
Yeah, which is important later. And so Frank Peterson's brother shoots Terry Maitland.
So the older brother of the little boy who was murdered.
Yeah.
So he shows up and pulls a gun out to kill Terry, to get revenge. And he shoots a couple times, wings him in the shoulder, and I think he ultimately he hits him in the head, right? Or is it the neck?
I think it's the chest.
Okay.
I think it's the chest. He does get him.
Yeah.
And Ralph Anderson ends up shooting the kid,
mm-hmm.
and he shoots him in the head and ends up killing the kid. And right as Terry Maitland's dying, Ralph Anderson's like, the thing that is on his mind most is, I gotta get a dying testimony. Like,
finally now, after all of this, he'll drop the act and he'll confess to everything.
Yeah, and Terry Maitland pretty much says, I didn't do it. I know I didn't do it, and you've essentially helped kill an innocent man, and how are you going to live with that?
Mm-hmm.
Something to that effect. And so
he dies.
He dies. It's pretty intense. Like, up until this point, it is one thing after another, and it's pretty intense, that point in the book. After that happens, Ralph feels terrible about it, and he's actually put on administrative leave. Yeah. He's put on administrative leave, so he's at home, mowing the lawn, and Bill Samuels is trying to, he's trying to talk to him. They're trying to square things away, and Ralph just can't let go of the fact that he caused someone's death who could have been innocent. But he also really does believe that he wasn't innocent, so
mm-hmm.
he's trying to figure all this out.
And all of the red flags that have been, just that he's just been ignoring because it was such a open and shut case. Just won't leave him alone, and he gets to this point where can't remember when he decides to look at the footage. So
he's talking with his wife.
Okay.
And he remembers thinking, man, I had like just hyper vision during that moment. Just his senses were heightened during the whole situation where they were escorting Terry Maitland to the courthouse. And all he remembers is yellow and a girl's bra strap that was yellow. And he's like, no, it wasn't the actual bra strap that my subconscious is trying to help me focus on. It was something else. And so he remembers this burned man, and he's trying to put all these pieces together.
Oh yeah, he has a yellow shirt. Because the burned man
had a yellow turban, which turns out to be a shirt wrapped around his head. And he does believe that shirt could have been the same shirt Terry Maitland was wearing the day that he committed all these horrible acts. Mm-hmm. And so
yeah, it gets all a little like there's a lot of nitty-gritty police procedural type stuff in this story that, if we go into detail about every last thing, we could be here for a long time talking about the order in which everything happens, Yeah. But ultimately he remembers this man in the crowd and asks around to the other officers,
He asks his wife.
Yeah.
Him and his wife look up the video, and the guy's not in there, but Ralph, he's like, I saw him there. He's not in here, so something's going on. His wife does, even then, suggest something supernatural, and he dismisses it. And then he actually convinces Marcy Maitland to meet with him, with her lawyers, or with her lawyer, with her lawyer's private detective, and to meet to kind of square things away. And it's as awkward as you could imagine. She blames him for the death of her husband and his humiliation and everything. Mm-hmm. And so that happens. They meet up. They try and figure it out. And Alec, the private detective, tells him, he's like, you got nothing. Or they're kind of letting Ralph know, you are just grasping at straws. You don't really have any other reason to be here other than to clear your name, so that everybody knows that Terry Maitland was guilty, so him dying wasn't a bad thing, so that you could go back to being a good detective.
Clear his conscience. Yeah,
that happens.
At what point do they bring in Holly Gibney?
So they go through that. Ralph starts talking to what's his name? Sablo. Yoon Sablo. He's a Latino detective, and they start talking about the inconsistencies in the case, and
it's kind of a I know a guy type situation, right?
Yeah,
like they've worked with Bill Hodges in the past, and they're like,
well, not them. The detective, Alec. Detective Alec had worked with Bill Hodges in the past on a case. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so then they kind of reach out to Finders Keepers.
Yeah.
And which is the name of the business, the private detective agency that Holly Gibney and now Pete Huntley, who was Bill Hodges' partner back in that series. But unfortunately, in the third book of the Hodges trilogy, I think he dies of cancer, right? Ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's lung cancer or I can't remember. But so he finds out that Bill Hodges isn't around, but Holly Gibney, I guess, is able to go out to Iowa?
It's Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah.
So she goes to Dayton, Ohio, which is where that conference was.
Yeah. And
so she goes out there to investigate and to try to find...
No, not where the Well, was it the conference?
Oh, no.
No, it wasn't the conference. She goes out there to investigate where the van came from. So
the unmarked white van, it had New York plates on it, and they're trying to track,
She's just following the back trail, so that's what she
following
goes to
the cookie
figure that
crumbs. Oh man, there's so much stuff that happens in this one.
No, but it's actually really exciting when she shows up.
Yeah.
She goes to figure that out, and she actually finds out that there was a almost identical murder and rape of two little girls. That just makes me cringe.
Mm-hmm.
Two little girls in Dayton, Ohio. That was the exact same thing as the Terry Maitland.
By the way,
Frank Peterson murder.
I know it's a little different, but the rape and murder of like two young girls kind of brought a little echo of Green Mile to my head.
Yeah.
It's like, anyways, I know it's not the exact same situation. Whatever. But yeah, so she's investigating this crime that fits the same bill. You know, someone who kind of claims to be in two places at once.
Yeah.
And, you know, similar victims, similar circumstances for what happened to the person who got accused. You know, they ended up committing suicide in their cell, I think.
Yeah, that he did. And there was also, you know, witnesses saw them in one place, and he was actually, you know, two places at once. So everything. And
he was an orderly or a person who works at an old folks home.
Yeah.
Which is, in the old folks home is where Terry Maitland's father lives. And Terry Maitland had been there visiting his father at a certain time frame that kind of worked out to be close to when these murders happened.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she's up there investigating, finds out that Terry Maitland had bumped into this orderly.
Literally bumped into him
and actually scratched his arm, you know, cut his arm and was bleeding a little bit from this, you know, violent bump in the hallways.
Terry Maitland's arm was scratched and bleeding.
Terry Maitland scratched and bleeding from this accident. But, and I guess Holly Gibney, with her past experience with
with
Brady Hartsfeld, and you know, her experience with the kind of the supernatural, she's ready to jump on that. You know, it kind of seems like there's something in her head that kind of goes off, like a switch that's clicked, and she's like, no, he's innocent, you know, and I want to call a meeting with everyone, all the investigating officers, with Terry Maitland's wife, with the lawyer, with everyone. So she wants to head back to Flint City, and she's like, all right, I'm ready to present you guys this story, present my findings, and I want to convince you that he is not the murderer.
And she actually, over the phone, she tells Alec, who hired her.
It was kind of fun, but real quick.
Like right away.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, because you're like, I wonder what she saw that we don't know yet as the readers.
Yeah.
You know? And, yeah, when she gets back there, she brings up this movie that she watched when she was like a teenager or a kid or something. And it's a lucha libre.
The luchadoras.
Luchadoras.
The luchadoras meet the monster.
Meet the monster. And it's a story of a monster who wears another man's face. I think it's like the town's like a college professor or something.
Yeah.
And commits a murder, and is very prominent, and it makes sure that he's seen committing this crime. So then this guy gets arrested, and this is all in the movie. This guy gets arrested, and he's on the hangman's noose.
Yeah.
I guess he's up there getting ready to get hanged, and he looks in the crowd and says, you know, there he is. It's like, that's me, you know. That's the monster.
And in Spanish, it's actually El Cuco.
El Cuco.
And so that's like in the English dubbed version in the book. He's saying it's the monster, and then he's hanged. And actually, in the Spanish version, he's saying El Cuco.
And so basically, in that movie, the monster shows up to the hanging to see the man who he got hanged, you know, and kind of feed off of that, the bad feelings, the negativity, everyone in the crowd, you know, I can't believe you would do such a thing, you know, you're such an evil man, you know, it's kind of that prominent public figure brought down to, like, you know, again, rapist, murderer, whatever, and just the outrage that it causes within a small town. That monster in the movie is feeding off of that, the bad feelings.
Yeah.
And so Holly Gibney shows this part of the movie and pretty much says, I'm convinced that this is what we're dealing with, this kind of monster,
It's a really cool scene.
It's a big jump, like a big logical jump, but I like it.
It actually does work in the book. She does a really good job of trying to convince everybody. Ralph Anderson is pissed.
He thinks it's a joke.
And his wife is ticked off at him because he won't believe. His wife is there. And actually, that's something we left out. And that's... His wife is there because she actually meets... she meets the monster. She meets the outsider because he appears to her in her house. When the doors are locked, the alarm is on and set, and he comes in, and she tries convincing Ralph of the situation that the monster appeared to her.
That she was not dreaming, and she saw him in her house, and he threatened, if your husband doesn't stop looking into this,
I'll kill him.
I'll kill him, I'll kill you, whatever. And she's 100% convinced that it was not a dream.
She even describes him, and he looks exactly like Claude Bolton, which you turn to find out is... He's
a bouncer at a strip club.
Gentlemen, please.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, that's a story.
We'll say a gentleman's club. The strip club is a bit of a jump. But anyways, yeah. So he's a bouncer there, and the Terry Maitland had, again, shown his face at that strip club as the outsider. The outsider went there wearing his face to make sure that he was seen by people who knew him there.
Yeah.
And just so happened to be that he shook hands with Claude Bolton. And Claude Bolton said he had a coke nail, which is a long... Your pinky nail is a little longer than normal, kind of like a spoon, and that's when people would do drugs, kind of scoop it up and have a long fingernail to do that. I guess that's a thing. It's kind of weird, but he said that his coke nail had kind of scratched him on the hand.
Enough so that he bled.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you kind of get that the outsider is wearing Claude Bolton's
he gets his
persona.
Gets some of the person's DNA through blood maybe to start some sort of transformation, and so you start to get the idea that he's going to be wearing Claude Bolton's skin. And Claude has these distinct tattoos on his hands and knuckles. And
one is clear
or want,
must, and can't.
Must and can't. That's what it is.
Must and can't, and
he's a recovering drug addict, and I guess that was his mantra.
Yeah, and so Jeannie Anderson, she describes Claude perfectly. And still Ralph Anderson. As the outsider.
She doesn't know who Claude is at that point.
She just describes this man in her dream, and Ralph shows her a picture of Claude Bolton when he was younger, and she says, yeah, this is the guy. And still Ralph Anderson is not believing. And so when they have this meeting that Holly Gibney puts together, Jeannie is siding with Holly because Holly justifies what she went through. And when Ralph goes against what Holly says, it's like he is completely dismissing his wife's experience. And so she's making him sit there, telling him to kind of shut up the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just ticked off. He is stubbornly unbelieving. And anyways, they keep running with it. And they figure out that the next person in line is Claude Bolton.
Who happens to be in Texas visiting his mom.
Yeah.
So
Lovey.
Yeah, so he's in Texas. So then at that point, they kind of all head down to Texas to kind of, I don't even know what you would call it, make a plan to...
Well, they kind of go down there to figure some things out, because they don't have... A lot of this is research, but a lot of Holly's research is just guesswork. She doesn't know exactly how the outsider works as a creature, so they go down there to get some more information.
Mm-hmm.
And they kind of expect some sort of confrontation with the outsider. And so, Ralph Anderson goes, Yoon Sablo goes,
Alec, whatever.
Oh, I forgot. The private detective Alec, and let's see, Howie Gold, and I don't believe Bill Samuels goes.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But Howie Gold goes, and Holly. And so they're down there, and they're talking to Claude Bolton and his mom, Lovey Bolton, and they're trying to figure some things out. They end up figuring out that Holly suspects that everything that Claude hears will be transmitted, telepathically to the outsider, and so Claude's mom, Holly whispers to Claude's mom this suspicion. Claude leaves the house to go pick up, food 40 miles away. And they figure out what's going on a little bit better, which leads them to... one thing that they figure out... Sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. One thing they figure out is that the outsider is like a psychic vampire. He likes to ingest pain, and it seems like that pain kind of lingers around certain places, such as graveyards, cemeteries, places like that. Mm-hmm. So they're trying to figure out if there's any place like that near the Boltons' home in Texas. There's no graveyards, there's no places that fit the bill until Lovey Bolton realizes that there is one place, the Marysville Hole, which is a cave, a network of caves. Mm-hmm. And in that hole, several people...
A rescue party
and other people die and were left there because of a cave-in. So they suspect that is where the outsider is staying. And they devise a plan. Holly goes off to Walmart.
To Walmart.
She goes off to Walmart, not Walmart, Home Depot. She goes to Walmart another time, which she absolutely loves. Her love of Walmart is very explicitly stated.
Very explicitly.
And so she goes on some little errand. She comes back. They all, stay for dinner, and then the next morning they leave on the pretense that they're going to take care of some business and then go, that their business is done there. And they all go to this cave network. On the way there, they are attacked by the outsiders.
Oh man!
Kind of.
We didn't even talk about.
We didn't talk about Jack.
No, they refer to him as the Renfield. He's the Renfield. So the outsider. There's a police officer who's brought back onto active duty. He's on vacation, and he's brought back onto active duty when Ralph is put on administrative leave. So he's a little bit ticked off that he's having to work on his vacation. What was his name?
Jack Hoskins.
Jack Hoskins. And, he goes to... He's investigating this case a little bit, and he goes into this barn where some of the clothing was found.
Yeah.
Right? And while he's there, he kind of has this kind of experience where he feels like this presence is behind him and kind of does brushes his neck, and he's got this paranoia of skin cancer because his mom died of skin cancer. It runs in his family, and so his paranoia is just stroked, and he thinks that he's gonna die of skin cancer. That he all of a sudden has this outbreak on his neck, and the outsider visits him. Whether it's just I guess he comes to his
psychic.
House. Yeah, it's kind of
it's kind of like an astral projection.
Yeah, like an astral projection. There you go.
That visits him and kind of coerces him into doing his dirty work.
Doing his dirty work, and he's like, I can fix it. I can make you whole again. I can make you healthy. I can take the cancer away. And
he's like,
so,
I gave it to you, and I can take it away. You just have to do what I say.
I mean, the outsider recognizes in Jack Hoskins that he's just not a good guy. He's very susceptible to, just influence. He's a weak human, and so he makes him into his Renfield.
Yeah.
Renfield to his Dracula, and so now they're back to the hole, to the cave. They all pull up to the cave because they're going to go in and they're going to fight the outsider. They're going to fight the vampire. And lo and behold, Jack Hoskins is there in his little sniper's perch, just ready to kill them all, for the outsider, to protect him so that he can get the sickness taken away. And it just so happens that he picks a sniper's perch right next to where a rattlesnake lives and hangs out. And when everyone gets out of the car to go into this cave to go find the outsider and kill it, because they're essentially, again, this is where it becomes Dracula. They're all going into, stake Dracula. They're going to kill him. And he starts shooting off his rifle. And the rifle pisses off the rattlesnake. So then the rattlesnake starts to bite him all over, on the legs, on the hands, on wherever. And so that inadvertently saves some of the party's life, some of the characters who are going in to kill the outsider. Look, I think Alec gets shot.
Alec gets shot and dies.
Yeah, he dies. And then, what's his name? Howard?
Howie Gold.
Howie Gold. He dies. Yoon, and then it's just Yoon, Ralph, and Holly at that point, right?
Yeah, and Yoon does get shot, but he does not die.
Yeah, he gets shot in the elbow. But also while they're hearing these gunshots go off, they hear this screaming, coming from whoever's shooting at them, and they hear pain, they hear frustration, they hear whatever. But some of the shots are going wild, so pretty much they were saved by the rattlesnake.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. And ultimately, Ralph and Holly, kind of work their way around and kind of catch, what's his name?
Hoskins.
Jack Hoskins. So they kind of catch him, kind of flank him from the side, and Ralph, boom, kills him. But not right before he kills him, he kind of confronts him, why are you doing this, and he confesses to everything and says, he's gonna make me healthy,
He's gonna make me better.
And he's just, you pathetic piece, boom, kills him, He doesn't say that, but
that's what you feel like.
Yeah, he is very well deserved. Again, he was being manipulated by the outsider, but
it's like he let himself. He's just a weak person.
Yeah,
he's weak.
So you don't really feel bad for this guy.
No.
Yeah. So anyways, at that point, you've got Holly and Ralph, who then go into the cave to confront the outsider. And, once they find him, he, kind of calmly confronts them, and
he's there. He's just hanging out in the little cave network. And you do find out that the previous cave-in happened because someone
fired a gun
in there. And so they
causing a
Ralph Anderson comes in completely ready to shoot the outsider.
Their plan is to shoot the outsider in the head.
Yeah, and he comes in ready to do that, guns blazing. And the outsider very calmly tells him, think a little bit about this. You do that, we all die. We could all die. And Ralph is kind of weighing it, and then the outsider yells as loud as he can, I am Claude Bolton. Yells it as loud as he can, and some of the stalactites start, fall. Pieces of the or pieces of the cave entrance fall and everything, and so he's like, "See, I'm not bluffing. You do this and you die." And Holly, all the while, Ralph is kind of going down this little staircase to confront the outsider, and Holly kind of lets him know, "Don't let him touch you," because that's how he gets
It's like
you,
his
is he
touch
cuts
is
you.
toxic.
Yeah, his touch is toxic, just like what happened to Jack Hoskins and Claude Bowen and all the others. He can't, if he gets a hold of your blood, he can become your doppelganger,
And
or
who else knows what else he's capable of?
yeah,
If he
or he
touches
can
you.
or he can give you cancer, just like he did to Jack Hoskins. And so Ralph kind of backs off, and then the outsider, gets pissed because of something Holly says. She confronts him and just lets him know, you are nothing more than a rapist and a murderer. You are nothing special.
It's like you're just like any other regular person who's, a rapist and a murderer. You're not any special monster. You're
ordinary.
You're ordinary.
Yeah, and that, for some reason, ticks him off more than anything Ralph had said to him previously. And so he charges Ralph and Holly.
Yeah.
And he goes to her, and Ralph doesn't know what to do. Ralph kind of freezes.
Holly just kind of hands over, hold my beer.
Yeah.
I got this. I'm going to take care of this.
And it's really awesome because she's not a confrontational person to begin with, but she pulls something out that you just don't know. She kind of has her hand hidden. She pulls something out and then takes a swing at the outsider and just knocks him down.
Pretty much like obliterates like half of his face, I think. Like knocks away some of his skull and whatever. It turns out that she's got a
happy slapper.
A happy slapper, which was her weapon weapon of choice for Holly. I think it was
and for Bill Hodges.
Bill Hodges. And it's what she did is she got a long sock with ball bearings that she had got at Walmart.
Yeah. And so she just obliterates the guy. I think she takes a couple swings at him to make sure he is down, and he is down.
And as his outer shell, outer human skin shell just kind of peels away, there's just a bunch of like nasty worms and.
Well, he actually goes through. They say he starts to, like, as he's dying, his face starts to change into each person that he had
inhabited,
shapeshifted
into.
And they say it's like over like about 100 faces until it goes back to what would have been his original face, and then he kind of dies, and very quickly
just like dissolves,
and everything turns into these worms. They look like maggots, just filthy, disgusting. And Ralph is just sitting there, just in shock, and everything, and. So that happens, and it's an awesome part of the story. There is one point during that confrontation when the outsider kind of refers to Ka. So there's a little dark tower. A nod to the Dark Tower. He refers to Ka, and so you know that it's in the main Stephen King universe. And then it dies, and Holly and Ralph, they kind of, it's over, and the epilogue is them going back to Flint City, kind of squaring things away with everything. They have to.
They pretty much talk to all of the eyewitnesses and introduce like doubt. They kind of use their silver tongue method to convince people that
Terry Maitland was not the actual
It was
murderer.
someone who looked like him, and so they pretty much make it their work to undo the,
just the damage that Ralph and Bill Samuels had done to Terry Maitland's family and his reputation.
And they pretty much clear his name, and they all live happily ever after.
Ish.
Yeah. I know there's that scene at the end. I really liked the nightmare that Ralph Anderson has right before the book ends.
Yeah, where he's looking under his fingernail and he sees one of those little worms, which actually reminded me a lot of Dreamcatcher.
Dreamcatcher, yeah.
If you guys have read that, that's another good one to read. But yeah, so that's the story.
It was just a nice little police procedural for an impossible situation. You go about maybe a third of the book not knowing whether or not it's going to be supernatural or, what it's going to be. I know one of the things that I felt like while I was reading this, because I didn't know this was both our first time reading the story, is it felt a lot like Black House.
Yes.
And without ruining too much from Black House, because we want to read that one eventually, give you guys a chance. Black House has kind of that, child murdering, evil monster from beyond, kind of like a Dracula type thing going on. But at the same time, you've got the police kind of investigating it. It just kind of had that same vibe.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if maybe, after all, Stephen King had finally written, something to continue that story. Because now it's Jack Sawyer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so continue Jack Sawyer's story, which really feels like a trilogy. And me and Mark here, we would totally pull a Annie Wilkes and smash up Stephen King's legs, chop his feet off, do whatever, force him to write the third book. We got to get our hands on Peter Straub too. Get those two in a room together, have them in their wheelchairs, having fun.
Oh my gosh!
Writing the third book finally.
We are not that crazy.
Oh, I'm getting close.
We're not that crazy, but oh my gosh, I wish he would. Oh, that'd be my dying wish. When I'm on my deathbed, please just write this.
So you're gonna die before him?
I'll die before him, but I'll ask him to write it so I can come back as a ghost and then read it.
Yes.
No, it did feel like Black House, and this was a really, man, it's a really not hard one, just a heavy one at the start. It's kind of like Desperation.
Yeah.
Desperation is very,
oh man, the beginning
very
of
intense at the start. Very intense. A lot of death, and this one is the same. It's really only one death at the start, but how it happens
and
is
the details.
All the details are just so. Oh man, it weighed on me while I was reading it.
It's just your level of disgust is just so high. It's just brutal.
Yeah, it is brutal. It's so brutal.
And we both listened to the audiobook version of this, which is read by Will Patton.
Yeah.
Who also read the Hodges trilogy. So he does a few other Stephen King books, and he's pretty good. Like I would say for a King reader, he's up in the top 10 for sure.
Yeah.
So
like our favorite is Frank Muller.
Frank Muller.
If I could bring back one person to life, it'd be Frank, so that he could only read Stephen King books.
Mm-hmm.
But Will Patton does a great job. He really does. The characters come to life. Magnus and I have been. We love how he does Holly. This is not in any way trying to make fun of how he does Holly, because he does a great job at showing how awkward she is as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, there are just some fun things. And I've been practicing today as I've been listening to audiobooks. My Holly Gibney voice.
You go first.
Impression of Will Patton. So let's see. What am I? So we've been practicing so we could do it here. My name. I'll say it. I'll say my name is Holly Gibney, and I love reading Stephen King. So here goes my Holly Gibney impression. Will Patton impression of Holly Gibney. Hello, my name is Holly Gibney, and I love Stephen King. He is the best author in my opinion.
I love shopping at Walmart. Walmart is a good place where you can get anything you need, and you don't have to deal with anyone. You can just go to self-checkout.
I'm sorry.
No, it's hard to listen to any part with Holly and not just kind of chuckle, because it's just so over the top. But
it works though.
It works, and
he does a great job.
He did the same thing with the Hodges trilogy, just not nearly as extreme as I think he did with this one. Or maybe just
Maybe we just didn't notice it as much.
Maybe we just didn't notice it as much with the Hodges trilogy, and this one was just very, very over the top.
Not that we ever want him to stop, or I ever want him to do it any different. I love it. It was just something we noticed. We're like, wow, we really noticed how unique, that's what we'll call it, how unique her voice is in these books, as read by Will Patton.
But yeah, it was a really, really cool book, though. Like, again, whether this is the first Stephen King book you read, or, you know, you're a constant reader, constant listener, it's a good one to start on. It's a good one to continue, you know, listening to. I enjoyed it a lot.
Other ones I would recommend that are kind of in the same vein. We already mentioned some.
Hodges, obviously.
Yeah, but definitely read, you know, Mr. Mercedes, the Hodges trilogy, Mr. Mercedes, Finders Keepers, End of Watch, and then this one. Black House has kind of that same feel of a child killer, murderer, rapist, and a lot of detective work goes into that one as well.
And if you know Stephen King's son, Joe Hill, there's a book he wrote called Nosferatu, which it's like a license plate, NOS4A, and then a 2 letter, or number 2.
Yeah.
Nosferatu. It's a vampire story, and it's that one kind of hits some of the same things as this. Yeah. So, did you ever read that one?
I didn't.
Okay, that one's great.
I didn't read that one. But
yeah, I like that one a lot.
I'll get to it eventually. But yeah, there's a couple recommendations for you. Good book. I'd say, you know, it's a winner. We liked it.
And we plan on reading it again, and maybe we can dive into, you know, just some like kind of character studies and just other things, tie it to other books. You know, we want to talk about it more. But this episode, we just mostly wanted to kind of...
It's a first impressions.
You know? And give you guys the scoop on, you know, kind of the story and, you know, kind of some of our thoughts as we're going over the story. So we definitely want to talk about this one more, but I think we're hitting the far end of how long we want these episodes to get. So is there anything?
No,
anything else?
Just remember, guys, follow us on Instagram. Check out our YouTube. With the next year coming, we are going to do an official podcast that will be real, and our next one is going to be Misery. So we're really
bringing
excited
it back
for
to
that.
my Misery joke, my tie up Stephen King, make him write books for me joke. I recently watched the movie Misery, and there's no way I can't read that book now. I need to read that book. There's no way that... I guess I said that wrong. I need to read it. I can't not read it now.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one that we really want to do.
It's incredibly suspenseful. It's short. It's only about... How long was The Outsider, by the way?
The Outsider, you know, let's check that out.
But
it's not too big. It's 560 pages.
560.
So it comes out to 18 hours if you're doing the audiobook.
Misery's only about 300 pages, so it's a quick read, a good winter book. Yeah, so that's the one we're gonna do next, and we'll give you guys some warnings on Instagram as well. But yeah, in the meantime, just remember, there are other worlds than these.